So as I breathe this in, this joy, this celebration, I acknowledge that one presence, that one God that is creating everything of itself, from itself, everything that is. And because that is the truth of all there is, it is the truth of me. I am made of that God substance, as all are made of it. And in that, I am never away or disconnected, because I am connected and one with everything, because it's all God. And in this truth of my nature, of what I am aware of how my feelings sometimes give me the idea that I am disconnected, that my fear or distraction, when things seem to fall apart, I forget that I am one with God, that I am always supported, no matter how many times I fall, that the earth is here to catch me, and that this perfect order of the universe is supporting me always, supporting everything, everything in life. For life is here for me and for all. And that my emotions help to bring me back, to remind me, for I am always being called and nudged to go deeper and closer in that intimate relationship with Spirit, to remember the sacredness of life, the sacredness of myself and all people and all things. And I'm so grateful for this reminder that each and every day I awaken to possibilities in life. And in every moment I can be awakened to the presence and the present moment, to be more connected and know that I am loved and cared for by Spirit and by life. And so I give great thanks for this truth, knowing all are held in it, all can experience it right now and forever. And I release this, knowing Spirit is creating it all, and it is done, and so it is.
So today we're going to talk about fierce clarity and using fear as a compass, when fear becomes a compass. There's a friend of mine who was studying meditation years ago in Thailand, and she was out with her meditation teacher walking through the grass, and the meditation teacher said, all of a sudden said to her, "Tiger!" And she's like, "Oh my God!" And he says, "And that's the fierceness that I want you to bring to your meditation. As though you were on alert for something that intense. Bring that fierceness to the meditation." Often we're taught to avoid fierce emotions, yes? But while that includes fierce anger and fear, it also includes fierce joy, fierce love, fierce grace. If we put a lid on ourselves and we tone it all down on one area, we tend to tone it down on all the areas of our life. Yeah? So we're often afraid of our fierce feelings because they are wild and intense and, well, fierce. And they're not proper and controlled, which our culture values. And each of the fierce emotions we're talking about this month are expressions of our full aliveness, which frightens the keep it all together, looking at cool, and don't be vulnerable aspect of our minds. And it frightens little old church ladies too, I've found. Not our church ladies, but this aspect of our mind was learned and conditioned by fear. Young children play fiercely, full out. I've got a park right behind my house, and there are no timid little children out there. Well, there's a few, But most of them aren't very timid, and they're having fun, or they're angry, or they're scared, or they're crying, but they're living it full out, yes? Living that life fiercely. It's only when parents teach them to hold back, to not be so exuberant, that they pull back. And we all went through that experience, yes? Most of us anyways, went through that kind of thing in our lives. And so while it's important to learn how to be among others in ways that are caring and non-injurious, we can still feel and live fiercely, fully, so that we'll explore fierce clarity and allow some of our more intense emotions to guide us to recognizing and reclaiming aspects of ourselves we may have hidden and buried under mounds of suppression from fear, shame, and hurt in the past. Are you willing to kind of take a look at that and let something out, a little more daylight into those areas? That's what we're going to play with today. So let's today look at fear. Last week we looked at anger. Today let's look at fear as a guide and not something to fear. Thich Nhat Hanh identifies all of our fears as having roots in our infancy when we left what the Chinese call the palace of the child, which is the womb. We left that place where we were so cared for and loved and one with everything and had nothing that we had to do. And all of a sudden we're thrust out into a world. We discover we have a body in a different way. Everything changes. No wonder we fear change, right? You know, there's that initial thing. And we have our first few moments of dramatic shock and change in our environment and the awareness that we are now totally dependent on others for everything, including our survival. Because we have hands and feet, but we don't know how to use them. We have everything. And from that develops, according to Thich Nhat Hanh, a core of fear of death and a core desire for safety and survival. And so there's this kind of pairing up, fear of death, desire for survival, that guides us, if we're not paying attention, through the rest of our lives. And until we deeply learn how to deal with these two cores, they will operate throughout every single aspect of our life. So when we experience fear, not the fear of a semi bearing down on us, you know, if you've got a semi bearing down on you with its brakes out, you don't want to sit there and go, let me take a few mindful breaths and contemplate. What is it that I'm really experiencing? Oh, look, I'm experiencing my fear of survival. Don't. Didn't hear that here. But if we're talking about fear of interactions in our lives, fear of the normal situations that happen in our lives, we have the opportunity to take a mindful pause and to look at this fear and ask, what can I learn here? What can I learn about me? What can I learn about what's happening internally for me? When we step back and realize that all fear is based in a belief in separation, that I'm separate from the source, the infinite source, that has chosen to be me, that is choosing to support itself as me. You know, remember, you're not you individually, you're God being you, yes? You're this infinite mind, presence, consciousness that's choosing to be itself as you. Nudge your neighbor and say, hey, you're God. You're God. I saw you got isolated out there. You are too. So this infinite mind is choosing to be ultimately, and it's ultimately responsible for our lives. And by forgetting that, we decide that it's up to us, all by ourselves, all alone, to manipulate and control life, to give us what we think we want and need. And when that doesn't work, and it eventually doesn't, yes, we move into a feeling that I'm not doing it right enough, and therefore from that, I am not enough. One of our core beliefs, our core holding ourselves back beliefs. Take a breath. Look at your neighbor and say, you do that and I do it too. Yes. And all of that triggers more fear and more hurt and more fear and more hurt, on and on and on and on until we interrupt it. The other night I was watching the movie The Golden Compass. And in it, there's a character that is an armored ice bear. And there's the main character, which is a big polar bear, basically, with armor, and they're warriors in this movie. And the main character, a young girl named Lyra, is riding this bear into a dangerous situation. And the bear in the movie, by the way, is voiced by Ian McKellen. If you remember Gandalf and that deep, rich voice. And so she asks this bear, she says, "What happens if you get scared?" And he replies, "I will master my fear." And you know he will. We are called to master our fears. We are called to master them so that we ride them instead of them riding us. And the way to master our fear is to look it in the eye and understand it. Not fight it. Understand it. Come to know it. Bring compassionate curiosity to the experience. It's like, what are you afraid of? What are you really about? I was in a situation recently where I had some fear stuff come up. And I had to step back and identify what it was that I was afraid of. And I realized I could take it all the way back to that fear of desire, or fear of survival, that I was going to get hurt. And it was not reasonable, but my little mind was going there, right? You ever have that where part of your mind goes, "There's no reason for this," and the other part is going, okay, that, yeah, okay, so I was there. Happens to ministers too. And so I finally had to just sit down and say, "I am loved and I am safe. I am loved and I am safe. I am loved and I am safe." And remind myself of that. So it's looking at that fear and practicing compassionate curiosity. What are you really about? What do you need? Understanding that at its core, it believes it's separate, alone, and totally responsible, and is afraid of death and desires survival. If we can realize that that's really kind of the bottom line of what's running us, and then we can look at that and say, is my survival really at stake here? If somebody doesn't like what I cooked for dinner tonight, is my survival really at stake here? Yes? We can look at that and say that. And that mind believes that it must control its environment through manipulation and doing, and it must be doing the right things, and it must be avoiding doing the wrong things, and that this is the underlying foundation of all of our fears. I might do it wrong and die. Breathe. It's okay. We all have it. So we especially encountered this when we're about to step out of our comfort zone into something new and to us unknown. Something changes, something's different. It may be forced upon us. We may be called to do something different, to go out somewhere where we haven't been before in our consciousness, in our lives. Forgetting that as we do, that there's only this infinite oneness of God, this infinite oneness of good and love. It's all we're ever stepping into. Any comfort zone we're stepping out of is the infinite good. Any new zone we're stepping into is infinite good. It's the same thing. Different form, different way of expressing, same thing. I was talking with somebody recently who was going through some stuff and finally remembered any path that I step onto is God's path. Any path. Now some are more enjoyable than others, yes? Okay? But any place I step onto, God is still present there. I'm teaching the teens the spiritual principles and practices class during the week, and that was one of the things we looked at this week is wherever we are, whatever we're doing, can we see the divine in that situation, in that person, in that experience? And when we can look through the experience and see the divine, it frees us up out of that fear. So all we're ever stepping into is that infinite. Our consciousness is simply calling us to be more awake, fiercely alert, and paying attention, not necessarily out of fear, but for the greater experience and enjoyment and growth of this situation that it brings into our lives, into greater good and greater love that is available to us in this situation. Can we be alert and awake? Have you ever done something and afterwards you went, oh, that could have been a really enjoyable experience if I was paying attention to it. You know, you just kind of wolf down a really delicious meal, but you're watching TV, you know. You do something, you're on vacation, and all you're thinking about is getting back home and going to work. None of you don't, but. Okay. So it's calling us to pay more attention to what's going on right around me. So what if we're being called to move into a new comfort zone that is far more wonderful than our current one? But we might have to go through a little discomfort, which our fear will equate to death. It blows it up, yeah, right? What if we have to go through that to get there? If I master my fear, I master my life. If I master my fear, I master my life. If I master my life, I get to use the powerful creativity that is always mine to use to command the law, the creative process of the universe to create what I love rather than avoiding or getting into petty squabbles with what I don't want. How many of us have ever gotten into petty squabbles with what I don't want, right? You know, I used to joke about, and I don't do it anymore because I still do it, having arguments with people who are not in the room. Oftentimes not even in my life anymore. Okay? The fact that I'm in the argument means that I lost already. I found that winning those kinds of arguments doesn't bring any happiness or satisfaction. Sorry. So mastering fear brings me to fierce clarity. So this week, I want to invite you to do two practices. The first one is pay attention when fear arises. Instead of trying to push it away and try to stuff it down, no, I'm not scared. Pay attention. Pay attention. And fear often comes to us in sneaky little ways, yes? Have you noticed? You're going along, you're not thinking of anything, all of a sudden it's like you realize, oh, I'm not doing that because I'm afraid. And then ask this fear, what are you really about? What is mine to see and learn here? So that's our first practice. Pay attention to it, talk with it. And then secondly, ask, what do I really want to create in my life? What is the fierce joy, the fierce love, the fierce dynamic that I want to create in my life that I've avoided out of fear? And take a step toward creating that and master the fears that come up along the way. As we step toward our greater good, fear will come up, yes? You've noticed that. So then it's an opportunity to just look and say, oh, what's that really about? Oh, that's just about this. Okay, I can step over that. I can step past that. So that's what we're called to do this week. These two practices, paying attention when fear arises and asking, what do I really want fiercely to create in my life? Are you willing to play with that this week? Fiercely play with it? Hello? Yes. 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 Fiercely. Yes. All right. I'm going to close with a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh from his book on fear, which is a great book, by the way. And he says, invite your fear into consciousness and smile through it. Every time you smile through your fear, it will lose some of its strength. If you try to run away from your pain, there is no way out. Only by looking deeply into the nature of your fear can you find the way out. There's an old adage that says you can't find your way out, you can only find your way through. And this is going through the fear. I'm going to face it, and I'm going to walk through it and find out that it's just mist. And when I bring the light of the sun, the light of consciousness into it, that mist dissipates like morning mist. That's all that it is. So then we have an affirmation. Say this with me. I face fear with fierce clarity and unwavering presence. I master fear and thus master my life. One more time. I face fear with fierce clarity and unwavering presence. I master fear and thus master my life. So